In this video, we are answering your questions about car audio and subwoofers. The first one's on the screen right here. You're looking for a good ported box that will fit in your specific vehicle with your specific subwoofers. And here is the Venn diagram for the kind of generic answer when you don't know anything about the subwoofers and know very little about the vehicle. You've got to pick an enclosure that's going to work well with your subwoofers, and you've got to pick an enclosure that's going to fit inside of your car. What you have to worry about is putting the cart before the horse. Don't buy the subwoofers until you know what box you're going to use, and don't buy the box until you know the box is going to fit in your car. In this case, the individual is putting the subwoofers in a minivan, so there's no issue with finding the space. But the other issue is the usability of the vehicle. If you've got a minivan with 3 rows of seating, and you need to leave that back hatch open for groceries and strollers, 212s ain't going to fit.
Yeah, totally worth it.
But if you don't need those second and third row seats and you fold them out of the way or pull them out of the vehicle, the sky's the limit. What do you mean by watts? We should always ignore peak. We should always ignore max. We're only paying attention to RMS wattage. The other thing to keep in mind is the old adage, it takes power to make power. Can your stock electrical system support a 3,000 watt amplifier? Probably not. If you're going to go up to 3,000 watts, you need to be looking into battery upgrades and alternator upgrades. All the questions here are real questions that people have sent me either through email or social media. I've removed their names because I'm not trying to call anybody out, and I'm putting these questions in the videos because these are questions that I get all the time, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly. And you're gonna wanna stick around for the last one because it is a doozy. Here's one that I hate to see. You've paid someone to install something in a shop, you've paid for a custom speaker design, or you've ordered something online, and you're not happy with what you got. I'm really sorry to hear that, but I can't do anything for you. Your best bet for resolving the issue is to reach out to the person that you spent your money with and ask them to make it right. I'm honored that you'd reach out to me for help, but I don't have the ability to intervene and fix the situation. How do I determine the frequency for a horn bass box? I assume we mean a folded horn. There must not be a lot of good information about folded horns because I get these questions all the time, and I know absolutely nothing about folded horns. The folded horn is one of those topics that's been in the back of my head for literal years. I've just never had time to take the deep dive into folded horns. So maybe this is my sign that I need to do that. When I do that, I'll post a video. So hit the subscribe button and ring the little notification bell so you'll see it when I finally get around to doing it. How do I figure out the tuning frequency of my ported enclosure? There are several ways to do this. The low cost, low budget DIY hack is just string or paper. Tape some string or paper on the top side of the port and play frequencies starting high, working your way down, or starting down and working your way up. And you're just looking for the point where the paper is moving like crazy, but the cone on the subwoofer isn't. The low budget hack for the passive radiator is to use rice. Just take some rice and put them on the cone of the radiator and the cone of the subwoofer. And again, play frequencies starting high, working your way down, starting down, working your way up. Makes no difference. You're looking for that one sweet spot where the passive cone's going crazy and the active driver is barely moving. For those who want a more professional way of doing this, I recommend a product called a DAT. You'll need a laptop. You plug this into the laptop, hook it up to your driver, it'll play a sweep, and that sweep will tell you your tuning frequency. If you're a shop or a professional builder and you don't have one of these to test your boxes, you really need to get one. Not only will it tell you the tuning frequency, it'll help you suss out any problems with the enclosure. Here's a question I don't get very often, but I've gotten 2 or 3 of these in the last couple of months. It's a real honor to get a question like this because questions like this tell me that people trust me and believe that I have integrity, and so they're willing to share an idea with me, an idea they might potentially patent or turn into a marketable product. If this is you, the best advice I can give you is stop talking. Stop talking! You want to be Johnny Tightlips from The Simpsons. You do not need to be sending messages to strangers on the internet. You need to hire a patent attorney, and you need to have that attorney write up non-disclosure agreements. And when you reach out to someone, send them the non-disclosure agreement and pay them for their time, expertise, and discretion. I personally know people and work with people who have patents and are going through the provisional patent process. These individuals all have a gag order. You have to stop talking. What kind of software do I need to start building subwoofer enclosures? The go-to piece of software is WinISD. WinISD will take your Thiel small parameters, run it through some really complicated math, and you can use WinISD to simulate how different size enclosures and different port tunings will influence the sound of your subwoofer box. So I use WinISD extensively. I've got videos on how to use WinISD and show it in many of my videos. It's free software, so the price is right. It is a bit dated. It hasn't been updated in almost a decade. It's not terribly user-friendly or beginner-friendly, and so a lot of people find it frustrating. I draw up plans using a program called SketchUp. If you go to my website, DIYaudioguy.com, I have a cut sheet builder. It won't give you a visual representation of the enclosure, but it'll give you the cut sheet. All you've got to do is go in and plug in your tuning frequency, your enclosure size, and your external dimensions, and it will quite quickly give you a really good cut list. Print that off and start cutting. Whenever I have time available, I'll go back and add new features to that tool, so I'm constantly upgrading it. So if you haven't checked it out lately, go check it out again and see if it's changed. Which brings me to the next question. I've gotten out of the box design business. I found that I just don't have time to take the custom orders and sit down in WinISD and then sit down in SketchUp to draw out the plans and do them right. I have a day job in addition to the YouTube channel. I'd love to get back into enclosure design services, but at this exact moment, it's just not in the cards. Here's a very specific question that's just the most recent example of a very common question that I get. Someone's gone out, they've bought some gear, and they have some questions about hooking up that gear. So if this is you, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you're putting the cart before the horse. The wrong time to ask for advice on gear is after you've bought the gear. So here specifically, the individuals bought 2 Sundown Audio subwoofers. Sundown Audio makes fantastic subwoofers. You're not going to go wrong with Sundown. They bought this new Epic Series amp from Audio Control. Audio Control makes great amplifiers. That's going to work fine. There's nothing wrong with this equipment. How do you wire them up? How do you get the most bass and sound quality? Well, that's a really big question because there's a lot that goes into that. You'll find the answer to that question over on my website, because over on the website, I've got a series parallel calculator that you can use to figure out if you need to wire things up in series or parallel or some combination of both. In this case, if they're dual 4-ohm subwoofers, you're just going to wire everything in parallel. Wire all the positives together, wire all the negatives together, and you're off and running. In this case, a pair of 1,000-watt subs and a 2,000-watt amp, that is exactly what you're supposed to do. There are people who are going to tell you that you can hook up a bigger amp to those subwoofers to have some headroom. You can do that, but the whole point behind having RMS ratings on gear is so you can match them together. 2,000 watts worth of RMS subwoofers, 2,000 watts worth of amplifier power. You're all set. You will need to run power and ground wires to that amplifier. 2,000 watts, you're going to need 0 gauge. The website has an amp power wire calculator as well, and when you go in and plug all the information, you're going to get a warning. My rule of thumb is anytime you go above 1,000 watts, you should upgrade the alternator. So the other question here this person should be asking is, how am I going to get 2,000 watts worth of power to the amplifier in the first place? And the answer is alternator, battery, big power wire. Takes power to make power. Make sure you've upgraded the electrical so that you don't starve your amp. Now about WinISD, it is not a very user-friendly program, and a common thing that's going to happen is you're going to enter the parameters into the program, it's going to do an integrity check, and it's going to fail. This person here has already gone through and checked the 2 things you've got to check first. The first is the units. It comes default out of the box metric, and what often happens is when the manufacturers publish the TS parameters, they're going to give you a mishmash of US and metric units. So maybe you thought it was in liters, but it was in cubic feet or vice versa. The other important thing to remember is that WinISD will auto-calculate some of the values. And if you go into the WinISD instructions, it'll give you the order you're supposed to enter the TS parameters into WinISD. What I find works well is to enter a number, click into the next field, and just wait a second for it to auto-calculate, because some of these things will automatically calculate and auto-populate, and that seems to work about 90% of the time. The other thing to remember is sometimes the TS parameters are just wrong. The good news is WinISD will still operate even though the integrity check may fail, and I have found that the results are oftentimes good enough even though the integrity check failed. Another common question, have you ever checked out or tested, or are you familiar with insert brand name or insert specific product? If I've checked it out any time in the last 5 years, there's a YouTube video on it. I'm just one guy operating by myself out of my garage. I don't have big corporate sponsors, and there are hundreds of companies selling audio gear. There's no way I can possibly test everything. I would love to test it. That would be great. In a perfect world, I could afford to take requests, but I simply can't. But if you would like for me to be able to, the best way to make that happen would be to head over to Patreon. If just 1% of my total subscribers would sign up at the $10 level, I could easily check out pretty much any amplifier on the market. So I would like to encourage you to head over to Patreon and sign up today. $10 and up patrons get their name in the video, and $25 and up patrons like Jonathan, Joe, JD America, Timothy, and Bo all get a verbal shout out in the video. And if Patreon is not your thing, a great way to support this channel is to head down in the video description and check out the affiliate links. If you click on an affiliate link, I might earn a small commission if you make a purchase. It's usually not a lot of money, but small amounts of money tend to add up. Plus, I've negotiated some discount codes for you that you can find down in the video description. For a complete list of my preferred vendors, you can find them on my website, DIYaudioguy.com. Okay, another question here for you on the screen. Thank you for the information you bring to the audio community. Well, you are welcome. I just picked up a 2021 F-150 crew cab. Awesome. Great trucks. And of course, you know what that means. That means we need some subwoofers and we need some under-seat enclosures. Fortunately, this guy is looking for a tight response and nothing super loud. And that's exactly what you're going to get with a subwoofer under the seat in a crew cab pickup truck. Things can get pretty extreme. You could do a seat lift and install 48-inch subs. People do that, but the most direct path to getting some decent bass in the system is going to be some of these down-firing subwoofer enclosures. I like the kickers with the passive radiator. My recommendation is to go ahead and pick up 2 of them. If you can fit the 12s, get the 12s. I always recommend that you get 2 of them so that you can wire them in parallel and get your amp to a 1 ohm load. If you think 2 of them is too much bass, you can go ahead and buy the 1 ohm stable amp and the first down-firing enclosure. And if you need more bass, add a second one later. It's just a matter of running speaker wire at that point. I don't get this one messaged to me a lot, but every time I jump on Facebook, I see it somewhere on one of the many Facebook groups that I follow. Should I worry about impedance rise? Should I wire my amp to 1/2 ohm to account for impedance rise? So impedance is the correct term to use when we're dealing with an AC signal like what we have going from an amplifier to your speakers. And the impedance in an AC system is a function of the frequency that you're playing, which means every frequency your subwoofer plays could be playing at a different impedance. And you might be playing some specific test tone, and at that test tone, you're going to be well above the 1 ohm load you're wired for, and you're going to get less power. Sometimes we call this box rise. You should only worry about box rise if you're an SPL competitor and you're planning on playing just one frequency. And if that's the case, wire the amp down to the dirt. Go to 1/2 ohm, go to a 1/4 ohm. You're probably going to break something, but that's the nature of competition. You push equipment to the breaking point because you're trying to hit the loudest number on the meter. For everybody else, for people who want to play music, don't do that. If it's a 1 ohm stable amp, wire it to a 1 ohm nominal load. Why? Well, because if you wire it to a 1/2 ohm load, at most frequencies, you'll be above the 1 ohm minimum for that amplifier. But then there'll be a couple of frequencies where you're below it. And the instant you crank it up and play music that hits those notes, you're going to blow the amp. Hopefully the amp will go into protect. Hopefully you'll pop a fuse. Hopefully you don't ruin your amplifier. But if the manufacturer says the amp is 1 ohm stable, don't go below 1 ohm. Here's what's funny. While I was filming this, someone jumped on Facebook and asked this question. Right at this exact moment. I see it every day. Okay, that one was my big pet peeve, and I've got one last bonus question for you. Should you use MDF or should you use plywood to build your speaker box? I made a video covering the pros and cons of both materials. Click right here to watch that video. I'm Justin. This is the DIY Audio Guy YouTube channel, and I will see you on the next adventure.